Have you ever wondered what really stands between you and a totally unfair boss? Or, what guarantees you actually go home from work in one piece? Well, it all really comes down to two super powerful ideas: the strength of working together as a group and your basic, fundamental right to be safe. So today, we're going to break down the essential rules that protect you at your job every single day.
So let's start with that big question. What actually protects your rights and your safety when you're on the clock? And honestly, it's a bigger deal than you might think. This goes way, way beyond whatever's written in the employee handbook. There's this whole legal and historical framework that's designed, really, to have your back. Let's start by unpacking that first piece of the puzzle.
All right, first up, the rules of the group. We're talking about something called labor relations. Now, this isn't just about, getting along with your coworkers. Nope, this is the official, legally recognized relationship between management and employees when they decide to speak with one powerful, unified voice.
And here's the formal definition. At its core, labor relations is really just the rule book for how a company has to deal with its employees once they're represented by a union. So you should think of it less like a casual chat with your boss about a problem and more like a formal treaty negotiation with legally binding rules of engagement for both sides.
Okay, so that brings us to the key player in this whole process, right? What in the world is a labor union, and why do they even exist in the first place?
So what is a union really? Well, at its most basic, it's a legally recognized group of workers who've come together for shared job-related goals. Now, the key phrase here is legally constituted. That's a big deal. It means they have real power and actual protections under the law. It's what separates, say, a group of coworkers just complaining at lunch from a powerful organization that can literally force management to come to the negotiating table. So what are those shared goals they're fighting for? Well, it almost always boils down to these three key things: getting higher wages, securing better benefits, and making sure working conditions are safe and fair. It's that classic strength in numbers idea, right? Negotiating for this stuff as a collective gives workers way more leverage than any single employee could ever hope to have on their own. And trust me, this is not some new idea. I mean, look at this timeline. You can see unions for cuff makers and cigar makers popping up way back in the mid-1800s. The whole movement really just exploded during the Industrial Revolution as factories got bigger and individual workers realized, hey, we need a way to counterbalance the immense power held by the company owners.
And then, the game changer. In 1935, the Wagner Act came along and it completely rewrote the rules. For the very first time, it was official U.S. law that workers had the right to form unions, and, maybe even more importantly, that management had to negotiate with them. It basically put a legal thumb on the workers' side of the scale, helping to even the odds.
So what's the main tool that unions use to get all this stuff done? It's a process called collective bargaining. Just imagine, instead of 1,000 employees all trying to get a raise one by one, a single team of representatives sits down with management to negotiate one single contract for all 1,000 people. That right there, that's collective bargaining, and it is the absolute core function of any labor union. Okay, so that covers the power of the group. But what about protections that apply to every single worker, whether you're in a union or not? Well, that brings us to our second pillar, your fundamental right to be safe at work. Now, this is a really key distinction to understand. A safety hazard is something that can hurt you right now. Think of a slippery floor or a piece of faulty machinery. It's immediate. A health hazard, on the other hand, is way more sneaky. It's something that damages your health slowly over time, like long-term exposure to chemicals or just really bad ergonomics at your desk. One is instant, the other is gradual.
But workplace dangers aren't just physical anymore. The psychological side is just as critical. So let's talk about one of the biggest health hazards in the modern office: plain old stress.
And here's the thing that's so important to realize about this. Workplace stress, it isn't just a personal failing. It's very often an organizational problem. Things like impossible deadlines, a total lack of support from your boss, or a toxic culture. Those things create stress, and that stress has real, tangible business consequences, impacting everything from productivity to morale.
And when that stress goes unchecked, what happens? Well, you get some pretty serious fallout. It leads to burnout, that feeling of just being completely drained and having nothing left to give. It leads to turnover, as good people just get fed up and walk out the door. And it can even cause dysfunctional behavior that completely poisons a team's ability to work together.
All right, so we've covered the historical foundations of labor rights, and we've gone over the essential principles of worker safety. So where does all of this leave us today? And maybe more importantly, what's next?
And really, that's the big question to leave you with. As our work lives keep evolving, with the gig economy, remote offices, AI everywhere, what do collective rights and individual safety even look like? How do you protect a remote worker from burnout? How do gig workers bargain for better pay? The principles we've talked about today are the foundation, for sure. But the challenges of tomorrow, well, those are what we have to figure out next.